What's going on? It's another episode of Apex Vision TV, and today we're going to talk about Nissan Zs, and we're going to give our opinion on them. So this originally came up because first off, when I was a kid, my dad always told me about how he had a Z, how he liked the Z less than the Z28 Camaro, but more than the base Camaro. And yeah, it was lighter, funner, more fun to handle, better to drive and stuff. But so that was kind of always why I ended up liking them. But I mean, as I got older, I started to like other stuff, but I always had a spot for the Z. But recently, I was talking to my friend about project cars. He was saying he wants something rear-wheel drive. He wants to do a manual. So I started looking at the VQ motor, and yeah, I was pretty disappointed. It's been around for a while now. I couldn't even tell you when exactly, but 350 was when it came out, and like I said, when I was a kid, I didn't know any better. But now I do. So the problem I have with it is they have these turbo kits, and they're pretty expensive. Now they are ball bearing kits, but I was doing my research and they were saying around 450, really got to be careful about the engine blowing up. And that made me start looking at parts, look at the pistons, rods, and you realize you basically need to buy pistons and rods and the crank to take full advantage of the turbo kit you just bought. So now you're spending way more money just to make your power safely. Dom, how you feel about Z's, and you know what I'm saying? What do you think are some better alternatives? But we're going to stay on the Z for this whole video.
So like when I was younger, I definitely was looking at getting a 300ZX. I had actually looked at a lot of them. But to be honest with you, I just had heard a lot of stuff about reliability. Not so much as a stock 300ZX, but just, you know, people doing mods to them or making reliable power. I wasn't really big into tuning or modding a car, but it was just kind of that feeling where, you know, a lot of us buy stuff because we want to do stuff to it. And I just kind of noticed that a lot of the ones that I was looking at, that was just in my price range, were pretty like used and abused. It was just kind of like younger kids like myself buying them, not really knowing what they was doing. And ever since then, I kind of been off of them, but I've always had a thing for 300ZX. The body lines, you know, something about that dual exhaust coming out the back is just always so clean to me. And then that 2x2, that was just always like a fun, sporty car. Now you talking about coming into like the VQ motors with the 350Z and things like that. I've had kids for a while now, so I haven't even really looked into two doors as much as I should have. But I think the 350Z looks really clean. But after doing the research with you and seeing what it might take to really make power out of it, unless you just really wanted a fun NA motor, I think it might be something to kind of stay away from if you have tuner aspirations. A big thing right now, and what's always been a big thing, is just really, you know, IS 300s, Supras, which most of us can't afford at the moment.
They are hard to get, but
yeah, for sure.
And this is another thing where I ended up looking into it.
Mm-hmm.
After I looked at the parts, like the stroker kit and turbo kits, and it's like, damn, like you either gotta run your turbo at 3 to 9 psi, or just get a different, or buy a stroker kit. Which, again, if you spending 10 grand on a turbo, granted it is a twin turbo ball bearing Garrett, so you're getting the best right there. I seen some single turbo kits too. Didn't see any single turbo journal bearing kits, but even then, you can break 500 with that. It just might take a bit longer, but you can break that. So no matter what you do, to do it safely, you need to get a stroker kit. And I'm sure there's some guys out there, oh yeah, I've done mine. 700 horsepower, stock internals. Yeah, that's cool and all, but from what I see, it's not as good of a tuner car as I would think it would be. But I was looking at, I was like, man, shit. My friend, I told him, I said, you'd be better off getting the 1J and putting it in there, because they have the 1J with the R154, the non-VVT I1 twin turbo. That's $4,000 at AZJDM or Ahsoka JDM, and you can have. You don't have to get a stroker kit. You can get a turbo kit and be good, or you can send those turbos out and be good and do a stroker kit. But you can just undercut it in other ways. And even Nissan themselves, yeah, the RB26 is the one we all really want, but you can get the RB25 DET, which is a single turbo from the R33s, but the lower end, well, not necessarily the GTR, just the R33. But you can get that and still do, and they still have all the parts for it, and essentially you can build like your inline 6, and you can kind of get that Skyline sound. Same with the 1J. But what as I do more research, I realized that Infiniti's new motor it's a VR, which is the same family as the GTR, but it's a 3.0. So I think GTR is a DTT, which is twin turbo 3.8. They have the DDTT, which is a 3.0, and they have it in 300 horsepower form and a 400 horsepower form. What I'm looking forward to seeing is, with that motor being made more and tuners already having experience from doing the GTR motor, I'm sure it'll be a little bit different because it's obviously a cheaper, more mass-produced motor. Will those shops that have that GTR knowledge put that onto the 3.0 in this new Infiniti motor, and will they do a new Z and, you know what I'm saying, get some fans back? Because at the end of the day, as you can see, Toyota's bringing their game back. With Subaru with the BRZ, you got the WRX, all those cars. People are, it's like that we're getting a surge of new cars that are ready to, new enthusiast cars, I guess. Like I said, with the Supra, the BRZ, and you whole time you wonder, what's Nissan doing? And like I said, we'll see what happens with this 3.0 motor and this 2.0 motor. What I think they should do is do a 200Z and a 300Z, and then the Nismo they can do 450 horsepower rear-wheel drive manual. I looked at the Infiniti Q60 with the twin turbo. There's some pretty good exhaust systems and stuff, but we'll see what happens with the aftermarket. What would you like to see them do on the with the next Z?
Man, I just obviously, you know, an engine that's a little bit more tuner friendly, or just, you know, I guess in reality, just make the engine a little bit more stout. And then really, I'm just curious on what they're gonna do body language wise. I mean, the new Infiniti stuff, it does look very good to me. Everyone's gonna have their own opinions. And it does look a lot different than the previous generations. So I'm just kind of, we've had the 350Z for what? I mean, it's been over 10 years.
Yeah, I think the 370 came out in like 09.
Yeah, so you're talking about we've had the 350 and 370, which aren't really that much different looking.
No, and honestly, I think the 350 looks better. I don't like how the 370 is angled up in the back, while the 350 is slooped. Has that angle just right to me.
Yeah, but, I hear you. I've seen a couple Nismos though. I really like those cars.
And it's a clean car to me. And I was talking to my dad about that, and we realized you don't see any Z's at the no-fly zone. That's because to make power, you got to do so much money. And again, so we'll see what happens with this GTR VR motor being put in a Infiniti, and if they're smart, like they need to do a manual Z in the 200 with the 2.0 they got from Mercedes, and this 3.0 400 horsepower or the 300 horsepower. But
so what do you think of some other like two-door style vehicles that either you can do in place of the Z, or that you could put a 2JZ or a 1JZ in to have just as much fun.
Well, I've seen 2J G35s.
Yeah.
So that means you can do a 1J G35. And like I said earlier, the RB25 single turbo, I would much rather, if it was me and I had to do like the Nissan, keep it all Nissan, that's what I would do. Because I looked on Arizona JDM, it's 3,200 for the engine and transmission. So if you want to do all-wheel drive, then you can definitely do that. And Z's are clean. There hasn't been a generation that I thought was ugly. So Nissan, step your game up. With the motor being already turbocharged from the factory and them knowing so much from the GTR, we'll see what happens with this one. Alternatives, Toyota, BRZ, the Supra, depending on if you get the 4-cylinder or the 6-cylinder. But yeah, it was I was surprised for sure when I looked at that, and it's like, damn, so you basically gotta spend double just to, you know what I'm saying? Disappointed, but there are signs of a better future for them. Please comment, like, subscribe, share your 2 cents. We appreciate it. Tuning out.